for all communities across Peterborough and beyond with me, Adrian Holdstog. You can catch up with past shows on Facebook and YouTube and keep in touch with us on Twitter and Instagram. Community Matters asks questions that matter to our community life. Our young people certainly matter to our community life. And with me for the first half of our show tonight is Stephen Milford, Project Manager, Youth Engagement in the Youth Inspired Project, working out of PCVS, just along Cromwell Road from our studio. Welcome, Stephen.
Hi, thank you, Adrian.
Now, what is Youth Inspired and what is your role?
So, Youth Inspired was a joint venture, really, which started off with Peterborough Council Voluntary Services wanting to provide some infrastructure to organisations that are working in the community supporting young people. So they put in as lead partner the bid to the community fund, the Youth Investment Fund, and through Neil Inspired, who I work for, we offer the youth work support and helping the communities to set up youth clubs across the city.
Right, so this is a change in policy, is it? Because the City Council used to have a lot of youth workers who were involved in running youth clubs.
Yeah, and I used to be one of those officers. I spent 15 years working with a local authority. The reality is central government cuts have meant that over the past 6 years, Peterborough City Council have lost over 80% of their core funding. Oh, gosh. So, you know, there's naturally been cuts to the city, and they've managed to keep a targeted youth service, which I think is really good, so helping those most vulnerable. But we've lost a lot of the open access provision, those safe places with trusted adults that any young person can go to, have fun and get support. So we want to bring that back. And the only way that's going to happen realistically is if the communities take over these clubs with our support, with the infrastructure that PCVS can put in. Hopefully we can build a network across Peterborough of youth providers just to support the community, really.
Wonderful. When did you start this new work?
So we started June last year was our official launch. And for the first 5 or 6 months we were out doing outreach and detached youth work in certain areas of the city, finding out what young people wanted, getting to know what community groups are in the area, and that's been a joy actually. We've really found that there is a lot of social investment and social capital in communities. Right. I mean, for example, in Central Ward we've got Communities First that are quite active, not just with young people but in various ways with their litter picks and supporting the community gardens. Over in Neem Valley I visited a youth club last week in Woodston and they had over 50 young people there. The whole operation is run by volunteers. Tremendous. And that's one of the clubs that we're supporting this year. And then over in quite a rural, probably our most rural club we're supporting. They regularly get 30 to 40 young people on a Friday night, and we're helping them set up a senior club on a Monday evening as well. Wow, gosh. So a lot happening in the first year. There is indeed. But is there a lot more to do? There is, definitely. We want to get young people not just having that safe place to go, but we want them to invest in their communities, in the future of the city. So next month we're going to be setting up our Duke of Edinburgh Open Awards Centre, which is going to be based in Eastfield at Newark City Farm, which will not only allow young people to get the World's Leading Youth Achievement Award, but they'll also be volunteering and giving back to the community. We've recently set up a new youth club in Autumn that's been running for 6 weeks now. And we started on week 1, I think we had 6 young people attend. We're now up to 26. 4 volunteers within the community have come forward to support that club. Wonderful. And I'm confident that within 6 months we'll be able to hand that club over to the community. And we'll just be supporting them from a distance. Well done, the people of Autumn, then. Definitely. Yes. And it's something that's happening all over the city as well. And it's in this role, I've been able to see just how much people care about young people. And people are realising how much young people have got to offer Peterborough as well.
Sure. And you say you're getting volunteers coming forward.
Yeah.
What if they're a bit nervous about working with young people or don't feel that they've got the skills?
It's a natural worry. There's a lot of people out there that have said exactly that. They come forward, but I don't feel confident in working with young people. I wouldn't know how to handle situations. We're about to launch a Introduction to Youth Work award, which will probably be starting in 2 or 3 weeks' time, and that will cover the basics of youth engagement, best practice. We'll be looking at conflict resolution, so how to resolve conflict between young people and adults, as well as between young people. How to set up a youth club as well, because there might be people out there that are thinking about setting up a youth club, but don't know how to go about it.
Okay.
And this is where PCVS come in really strongly, because their community development team is growing.
Right.
Growing now. They've now got 3 people in place, and they're going to offer that infrastructure support. So if a group decide they want to become a charity or they want to set up as a constituted group, PCVS will be there to support them and guide them through that journey.
Wow.
So it's not just about the youth clubs.
Yes.
It's about the training. It's about supporting the adults, and it's about supporting the organisations.
Gosh.
So in the nicest possible way, in a year or so's time, after we've started working with these clubs, we hope they don't need us anymore. other than being a friendly voice that they can come and speak to for advice or guidance.
Of course.
Yeah.
But what I particularly like about how you're describing this programme is the joined up thinking that's going ahead.
Yeah.
So training is available for volunteers.
Yeah.
Professional staff like yourself are available to get things started, or maybe if a youth group has got stuck in some way, to look at how that can be moved forward again.
Yeah, definitely.
What about the worries that people might have, things like safeguarding and administration and insurance?
So around safeguarding, we're going to be working with the Peterborough Safeguarding Board, and we're going to be offering training to any volunteers that want to go on it. When we do the organisational health checks to check that the organisations are in a position to run their projects, and that's not a pass or fail thing. That's there's something there's a policy that might be missing or might need tweaking. We're there to support you in developing that. So we can help out with things like the paperwork. We can provide documents for quality assurance, like registers, membership forms and things like that. But what we're finding with a lot of clubs that we're going to, they've already got these things in place. Okay. So there's a lot of good forward joined up thinking going on even before we've got to supporting them.
So there's not one standard that you're trying to impose, but you have the resources to offer, to fill in any gaps people
Absolutely.
might have.
I think it'd be nice to have a minimum standard across Peterborough.
Oh, yes.
And that's what we're aiming for. And by offering the training, and like I mentioned, the safeguarding training around the prevent agenda, first aid training, food hygiene training, because if we've got youth clubs that are making chocolate cornflake cakes, the lead worker does have to have a food hygiene certificate. Okay. So it's the little things as well as the big things. With regards to insurance, we can offer advice for how to get insurance to support non-for-profit organisations, which would be probably cheaper than if they went to mainstream insurance companies as well.
What about premises? Have people got access to premises, or is that a problem?
There are a lot of community centres in Peterborough that could do with being better utilised. I mean, to give you a good example, in Orton, we're working out at the Goldhay Centre, which has a lot of variety in groups that use it. And what we found there is they're quite keen for a youth club to develop in that area. They do have a targeted youth club that's run by the local authority, which may be or may not be there on a permanent basis. But we offer that open access youth provision there. They're happy to host us. they've offered us a little bit of land where we can store all our equipment in a shed and things like that.
Yes.
Because, you know, our workers don't want to be like trying to fit pool tables in the back of the car and things like that.
Yeah.
But we're getting a lot of support from the community, and community centres seem to be quite open to allowing the young people in them, which is fantastic.
Wonderful. Now, you mentioned pool tables, and one of my questions was going to... I have to admit it's a very long time since I was a young person, so youth clubs must have moved on since my day when we had table tennis and pool. What other sorts of activities do young people get up to now?
Well, we've had a local charity called Boxing Futures get involved, and they've offered taster sessions at some of our youth clubs, which has been really, really good. We've got young youth groups that have been looking at possibly bringing outside provisions in. So one of the examples was they wanted to bring exotic animals in from the exotic pet refuge to find out about them. Now, hopefully they won't bring the crocodile because that creates a whole new risk assessment for us to do.
Yes.
But yeah, it's about being forward thinking. We've been discussing in the office things like dance projects, youth choirs, football projects. In my time at the local authority, we did a couple of Friday night football projects that are always very popular. So we are open for everything. It's not necessarily about youth clubs, it's about youth provision. So it could be that it's not necessarily a club, it could be that it could be a sporting event that meets on a regular basis, or an arts event. I mean, recently we took representatives from all the clubs we're working with over to the Undercroft Theatre in Hampton, where they watched a play that was put on by young people for young people around exploitation in the workplace. And what it was really nice to see all these groups from around the city coming together, watching the play, having a little bit to eat, and then going through a workshop together. And it was a real positive environment, and that's what we want to replicate across the city.
Gosh.
So hopefully our young people won't be, I'm in Orton, so I can only go to Orton Youth Club. Hopefully they'll feel confident to say, I'm in Stanground with mates this weekend, I'll pop into Stanground Youth Club, or I'll go into Community First Youth Club, or wherever. It's almost like we're trying to create a bit of a cooperative across the city of youth organisations.
Yes. And do you find there's an opportunity for volunteers to visit other places so they can see what their neighbours are doing?
We've talked about this as well, and what we're planning to do is to hold socials as we get the youth clubs developing, so that we can share best practice amongst each other, and also get to know sort of how other youth clubs are operating. You know, our next example of that will be the youth work training, where we'll be pulling people in from all youth clubs. So that'll be our first kind of rejoining of the volunteer force. But yeah, we do want them to get them sharing best practice, and visiting youth clubs will be an excellent way of doing that.
Smashing. Youth provision, I love that thought, that concept, and the cooperative as well. Now, you mentioned Duke of Edinburgh award scheme. If somebody's not heard of that, what is that all about? So
the Duke of Edinburgh Award Scheme is well, it is officially the world's leading youth achievement award. It's delivered in over 200 countries across the world. It's called different things in different parts of the country. So in New Zealand, they call it the Hillary Award. And what you do is you have to complete 5 sections to get your bronze, silver or gold award. So you have to learn a new skill, which you do for an hour a week. You have to do some sort of physical activity for an hour a week, and you have to do some voluntary service for an hour a week. And 2 of those, so for bronze, 2 of those units you would run for 3 months, and 1 of them you'd do for 6. And then you have to do an expedition, which is what Duke of Edinburgh is probably best known for, where you're putting your rucksack on your back and you've got to go off and find your way around the countryside.
And sleep overnight.
Sleep overnight.
Good for yourself.
Yeah. So you're pretty much a snail. You got your home on your back, and you live into your own devices.
Real adventurous stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's something that we want to open to more young people in Peterborough, because I think there is I don't want to say middle class, but there is a demographic that can afford to do Duke of Edinburgh because it's not cheap. If you've got to buy all the equipment and pay to do it, it can easily cost in excess of £500 or £600 just to do a bronze award. So through the Youth Investment Fund, we funded rucksacks, sleeping bags, tents, so that young people can borrow them from our stock. Yeah. And we're also going to be offering some bursaries to those that need a bit more support to be able to access the award.
So it really will be available to everyone?
That's our plan, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, definitely.
And if I say everyone, people with disabilities?
Yeah. I mean, funny enough, you talk about disabilities. We did an assembly in Heltwaite School last Monday, which was very successful. We had Dave the Clown come in, who entertained the young people. And we handed out flyers to say we got this youth provision happening around the city. And on last Wednesday, we had a young Down syndrome lad turn up at our youth club with his sister who's autistic and his mum, who has just become our newest volunteer. So we want to include all young people in the city, regardless of their ability, academic ability, cultural origin. We don't discriminate in any way. It's about including everybody.
Wonderful, that really is. And we want to be, we're one of 5 local authorities that's been designated as an integrated community.
Yeah.
We really want to work at that. And this youth-inspired project seems an ideal way of encouraging across this whole city and across all cultures, all faiths and all ages of young people. Integrated community. That's wonderful.
Definitely.
Now, I've got a bit of a news item to share, and then I want to ask you a question about it, Stephen. Prince Harry has been involved in highlighting Britain's knife crime crisis by backing 3 new youth zones in London. And today he has opened a new facility called Future, the on-side youth zone in Barking and Dagenham. The team behind the centre want to tackle the capital's knife crime and gang problems by providing activities and support services to keep kids off the street. Other youth zones will open in Croydon and Barnet this year. The chief executive said, "Youth zones absolutely play a part in helping young people stay safe and helping young people reach out for positive opportunities in life rather than feel that they need to go towards more negative activities." And apparently there are 9 other centres in the north of England, from Manchester to Wolverhampton. The centres are open when schools are closed and offer around 40 activities and support services with an ethos of providing somewhere to go, something to do and someone to talk to. What are Peterborough doing to beat knife crime?
I think what you just read out mirrors what we're trying to do. Is we want a safe place with trusted adults where they can get support, information, advice and guidance and have fun. I think if we can inspire young people to be the best, they don't need to consider the worst that they could be. So it's about positive role models and giving them a path they can travel down where they can engage in their community and hopefully never even venture into those more negative sides of society. I mean, knife crime is a massive issue in the UK, and it's worrying when you hear statistics like knife crime is worse in London now than it is in New York. It's a real worry, and it seems to be every morning on the news you're hearing about another young person that's been stabbed in London or elsewhere in the country. So I think Prince Harry is the right person to front this. I think he's respected by young and old people alike, you know, all across society. So I think it's really positive for young people. I don't think we can have a better champion, really. Surely.
Well, if Prince Harry is listening, or if anyone listening knows Prince Harry, then invite him to come to Peterborough, because here he would see youth inspired and the tremendous activities that Stephen and his team are working on. Another area where I think our young people are at such risk of getting drawn into is drug crime. The crime of funding drugs, but also the crime of passing them and pushing them and trading them. Have you encountered that at all in your work?
I have, yes. Through my work, when I was working for the local authority, delivering Prince's Trust programmes, I found that we're getting a lot of young people that were referred from youth offending that might have been involved in county lines, cross-county trafficking and things like that. It's not a Peterborough issue, it's a UK issue, unfortunately.
Sure.
But, you know, this is something that hopefully we can address as early as possible. And I think because our youth clubs run from 10 years old upwards, we're hopefully going to get those positive role models in place at a young age and try and deter them from getting involved in such behaviour.
Yes. So we have to have laws, and we have to have police to police those laws and catch the criminals. And the major criminals are those who are sourcing the drugs and pushing them on to us. But it's so easy for young people to be influenced and to feel they want to belong by doing a little job for a drug runner. Yeah,
and also they can probably make some money at it as well, which can look attractive for a start. But then you got the trap of, you know, you are being exploited. People are taking advantage of you, and it's a young person that's going to get caught. It's never going to be the man behind them that's providing the drugs or putting those young people in danger, because they are in dangerous situations. These are the same young people that we're seeing on the news being stabbed.
It's so true what you say about the money. It appears to be easy money, and it's attractive, and you don't have to apparently take very much risk. And you get the high life from it. Yeah,
easy money but dangerous money, I would say.
Indeed. Yeah. And there is a better way of life.
Absolutely.
And youth inspired, and the youth provision that you're planning to bring us sounds the key for Peterborough across the whole city.
Yeah, hopefully.
Wonderful. Hopefully. We've not got all that long left, Stephen.
Okay.
But are there any final thoughts and messages you'd like to share with the whole of Peterborough City about our youth?
Okay, first of all, let's keep investing in them. They are our future. Yeah. We've got a lot of young people that are willing to do good in the community. They just need to be given that opportunity. And like I said earlier, it's down to the communities to step up and be able to offer that provision. And if you're willing to do that, we're willing to support you. What I will say is you can like us on Facebook, if I'm allowed to say that.
Please. Yes.
Youth Inspired Peterborough is our Facebook page. We promote all the clubs that we support, as well as other clubs that are operating in Peterborough. So we're trying to make that a place where you can find out what's happening across the city.
So that's Youth Inspired
Peterborough
Facebook page.
Yeah.
We'll put that on our Salaam radio.
Okay, that'd be fantastic.
Contact as well, yes.
And if you're interested in volunteering, please email us at youthinspired@pcvs.co.uk. And we will support you with training. If you're interested in setting up a club, we will support you in getting that up and running. And you know, we're here for the community. We're here for the young people. Yeah. So yeah, get in contact, please.
And you have a little source of funds as well.
We do, yeah. We have a small pot of money where youth groups can apply to get support to get started and to deliver some activities. The great thing is we have a youth panel who will look over the applications and decide whether they think the youth club is worth supporting, and they'll ask for extra information if they think they are more scrupulous in examining the applications than the adults in many way.
So the youth panel is young people themselves?
Absolutely, yeah. Right. Yeah, we want this project to be owned by young people as well as support young people. So yeah, our youth development officer Prin runs the panel, and they meet once a month. And if there are any young people out there that are interested in joining the panel, please get in touch as well.
Gosh,
because you can help decide what provision is out there for young people in for the future of Peterborough.
Well, that's wonderful. Stephen Milford from Youth Inspired project to bring youth provision across the whole of Peterborough City. Thank you so much for joining me tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's all we have time for this first half of our Community Matters show. A big thank you to Stephen Milford of Youth Inspired for all he's shared with us tonight. But stay tuned as we have a great guest joining us after the break. We're going to be talking about justice, and we're going to be talking about something called restorative justice. I wonder what that is, and I wonder how we might benefit from that, benefit from learning more about that. And that's Ben Andrew will be joining us on phone in just a few minutes.
Stay tuned to Salaam Radio after this short ad break.
The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, the best charity is to provide water. Every minute, 3 children die from drinking dirty, contaminated water. With your help, we can deliver thirst relief by building a water well in Asia or Africa and transform the lives of communities with a reliable source of clean water. Call 03000 11 11 11 or visit www.pennyappeal.org. Penny Appeal, small change, big difference.
Peterborough just got a whole lot tastier. Five Lads Flame Grilled Peri Peri Chicken is now open. Bring your family and friends to Peterborough's first HMC meat selling restaurant. We are experts in grilled chicken, lamb chops and gourmet lamb and beef burgers. Our healthy options include fresh salads and fresh grilled vegetables. Fresh, clean and healthy grilled food with 4 different flavours. Lemon and herb, medium, hot and extra hot. 5-star hygiene rating. Eat in, order and collect or order for delivery on Deliveroo. Follow 5 Lads Peterborough on Facebook and Instagram 5 Lads. 15 Cowgate, Peterborough, PE1 1LZ. Call 01733 56 22 87. Open 7 days a week, 12 to 11 p.m.
सलाम रेडियो और पेनी अपील सजा रहे हैं ग्लैडस्टोन पार्क कम्युनिटी सेंटर में महफिल कवाली की एक खूबसूरत शाम मशहूर कवाल ज़हीर अब्बास के साथ 13 अप्रैल बारोज़ हफ्ता शाम 6 बजे। टिकट सिर्फ 10 पाउंड में। टिकट और मज़ीद मालूमात के लिए आज ही रब्ता कीजिए 07722 558884 या फिर 07852 685851। महफिल कवाली की एक शाम कवाल ज़हीर अब्बास के साथ।
Almarad Tiles. With over 70 stores nationwide, we are now open in Peterborough. Up to 50% discount offers now on. Largest selection of tiles. Full bathroom suites from only £189. Paint, LED lighting, laminate flooring from only £7.99. Over 1,000 designs of wallpaper in stock. We have everything you need. Come and visit us at 193 Fengate, Peterborough, PE1 5BH, or call us on 01733 34 58 47. Almarad Tiles, now open.
Had a car accident or an accident at work? Accident specialists are experts in no-win, no-fee accident claims. Leave the hassle to us. Our multilingual settlement experts will manage the entire claims process on your behalf, with nothing to pay up front. We provide services such as credit hire, taxi vehicles, recovery, storage and much more. For full details on our range of services and a free consultation, call us on 01733 555 774 or visit our office at 249 Lincoln Road opposite the NatWest Bank. Accident specialists. Start your successful claim today.
Feel like some great tasting chicken tonight? Great meal deals, wraps, burgers and sides. We've got it all at Chicken Palace. Call and collect at 302 Lincoln Road on 01733 702 447 or 8 Park Road on 01733 34 3750. Chicken Palace, open 11 a.m. till late.
This is Imam Siraj Wahaj from Masjid Al-Taq in Brooklyn. Keep tuned.
Father, oh Father, why
Broadcasting 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. This is Salaam Radio.
Welcome back to Salaam Radio. This is Adrian Holdstock running the Community Matters radio show. Now, many of us have been victims of crime, from pickpockets and house burglaries to hate crime and violence. We want justice, but what do we mean by justice? Is it only about criminals being punished and locked away, the longer the better? Or do we think a life of crime isn't the only answer? Are there ways to see justice and rehabilitate the criminal? And what about the poor victims? So my guest this second half of the show is Ben Andrew. Let's see if we've got Ben on the line.
Hi there.
Hello, Ben. Welcome.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you ever so much for putting the time aside to come and talk to us.
No problem.
Now, you're associated with a charity called Why Me? Restorative Justice. What is that?
So, first of all, I'll explain what restorative justice is, because it's not a concept most people are familiar with. So, restorative justice is where a victim of crime has the opportunity to meet with the offender, and they talk about the impact of the crime and the impact it's had on them. But it only goes ahead with both parties' consent, and it's mediated by a trained facilitator. So this can happen at any time during the criminal justice process. So it can happen alongside out-of-court disposals or conditional cautions, but it can also happen, you know, with someone who's in prison for life. So it's a process and a tool which can be used alongside the other parts of the criminal justice system. And it's been shown to have enormous benefits to both victims and offenders. I mean, for victims of crime, many people who identify with this who've been victims, they feel after the dust is settled and after someone's been to court, etc., or it's been resolved in whatever way, they tend to have loads of unanswered questions and emotional damage and unaddressed feelings and all these things after a crime. And for many, many victims we've dealt with, the opportunity to sit down with that offender and tell them exactly how much that crime affected them and how much it's making them feel is a chance to regain their voice, it's a chance to regain control and to seek answers that allow them to move on with their lives.
But how do you get a victim of crime to agree to meet face to face with the offender?
Well, so as I was saying, it's not really a question of getting them to agree, because it's a completely the victim's choice. No one is strong-armed into restorative justice. It's something which we need informed consent from both parties to go ahead with. But the problem is that lots of victims of crime aren't made aware that this option exists. The majority aren't. So in theory, according to the Victims Code, the police should ask all victims of crime, when there's a known offender, hey, there's this thing called restorative justice, here's how it works, we'd like to hear more about it, etc., etc. And then victims will have an informed choice about whether to go ahead with that process. Now, that sometimes happens, but at the moment there's a lot of what we call gatekeeping, where people make decisions on behalf of victims, and victims don't really get the choice. But in reality, when victims are given an informed choice, and when they are shown what restorative justice is, many of them are very eager to meet the offender, because they have, as I just said, they have many, many things they want to say to them. They have many things that have unanswered questions. The reason our charity is called Why Me is because that's what so many different victims have said. You know, they go, oh, my house was burgled, why me? Maybe what were they targeting me personally? Was I being stalked? Will they do it again? You know, what about my child? Would they hurt me? Why do they do that? All those questions go round and round and round a victim's head. And then when they have a chance to meet that offender and put those questions to them, sometimes the monster that's grown in their head becomes a less scary figure, and they're able to get answers, and maybe they find out, oh, it wasn't specifically me being targeted, it was because of drugs, it was because of something else. So that's a very powerful part of the process. And, you know, government research into restorative justice has shown that 85% of victims who go through it are satisfied with the process.
Well, that's a really good selling point to say to a victim, and hopefully the police would be saying this to the victim when they're caring for them.
Yeah.
Have you heard of restorative justice? Would you like to know more? Now, if a victim says, well, I'm not really sure, but who can I talk to find out more? Is that still the police's responsibility, or does that where your charity come in?
Since I've started working with police forces and working in Cambridgeshire, you realise that police in different areas are all structured differently. But you'd have in Peterborough, you'd have a victim and witness support hub who would get in touch, and then if you wanted further questions or further discussions with anyone about it, that's absolutely fine. That's to be expected. And there are restorative justice staff at the victim and witness hub who are there and ready to take your case. So it's all available in the police service. Where our charity comes in is that, so we do two things. First of all, we do campaigns and research into restorative justice, and we try to increase the use of it. So at the moment, we're working on this project which has involved Cambridgeshire, which is about trying to increase the use of it for hate crime, and I can go into that more in a sec. But the other part of our service is that we run our own restorative justice service. So if anyone listening, if this is resonating with people and they think, oh, I would like to meet my offender, you can always contact us as a charity. We run restorative justice ourselves independently as well. And we've had lots of cases, and they've gone from the sort of the lower level or small crimes up to, we've had cases of people, tragic cases of people who victims of knife crime from their partners and rape and lots of really, really horrible crimes, people whose children have been killed, and it can be anything from more minor crimes to very serious crimes. You can see a huge effect on victims who go through this process. So yeah, people can get in touch with YME anytime if they have any questions at all about restorative justice.
Oh, wonderful. But actually, from what I hear you say, the police service do have staff who are meant to be helping victims take the next step of thinking through and saying, I would like to meet the offender. Can you make it? Yeah, asking those staff, can you make it happen? And then for something to be set up.
Absolutely, and this is all about sort of where in the process you are. So if you're the victim of crime and you've reported it and there's a known offender, and then you then get contacted by a victim and witness team, they usually run through lots of questions with you. And often what happens is there's many different things to run through, and they might say, oh, would you be interested in meeting the offender? And you might go, no, and that might be it. Whereas what often happens is victims then reflect, maybe after court, they sort of think, oh, there's so no answer questions. And if they then, much later on, come to, you know what, I'd like that opportunity, that's when it can be good to get in touch with YME, and we can help to organise it for you. Because victims can have obviously whenever you're the victim of a crime, you go on a healing journey. And maybe immediately afterwards isn't the time where you start thinking about meeting the offender, but maybe we've had some who have come to us years later and you've said, I'd like to see if restorative justice is possible. And obviously we can't make any promises because maybe the offender isn't interested, but often they are. And we've, as an organisation, we've seen some really, really magical moments. I mean, our organisation was actually founded after a restorative justice meeting between a man who was assaulted and burgled in his own home and a serial criminal called Peter Wolf, who reckons that he had committed 20,000 crimes. And they had this restorative justice meeting. The two men are now friends. That's often not the outcome of restorative justice, but in this case it was. And they set up this charity together, and they're pushing for more victims to have access to it. So the most important thing to remember is restorative justice can be for all shapes and sizes of crimes, and it can happen at any stage, years after the crime, immediately after the crime, while the person's in prison, if the person didn't go to prison, all sorts of variations. We can make it work sometimes.
And it sounds as if it could have a real good impact on both the victim and the offender.
I mean, certainly it's a very, very personal thing. So for some people, they just think, you know what, why would I ever want to meet the offender who's committed this crime? But for other people, it's just a magical moment. And, it allows them, there's such a long list of benefits. I mean, many people are able to, there isn't always an apology, but many times people do get an apology. Sometimes they go away and they don't feel afraid of that person anymore because they've seen them looking weaker and they've seen them, more timid, obviously, when you were a victim of a crime. And from the offender's point of view, the same government research showed it has a clear impact on repeat offending, and it makes people, face up in front of the victim to what they've done. Because if you think about it, the criminal justice process, you commit a crime against someone, but after that, it's you versus the state. So you go through the witness and the courts and this and that, but you never really sit down opposite the victim and hear what you've done. The court is a process of you're always trying to defend yourself, you're always trying to minimize. But actually sitting in a room opposite the person you've harmed and hearing, this is the impact of my crime, I still can't sleep, I'm amazed. I mean, some people are staggered by it. And it's particularly interesting, as I said, we're doing a project about restorative justice for hate crime. And that's definitely one of the areas where the benefits can be extremely large, because so I've spoken to groups throughout Peterborough and Cambridgeshire about this project, and what we've heard time and time again is that victims of hate crime, and I'm sure many listeners will identify with this, it can be a drip effect. So someone rolling down the window and screaming a racist insult at you is obviously horrible in any context, but also when it's happened to you many times before, it builds up, and it becomes such a huge problem for some people. And often offenders, we might say, God, how could you be so ignorant? But often people just, don't realize. They honestly are flabbergasted by how much damage they're causing. And for many people I've spoken to who have been victims of hate crime, they've said, I would love to have the opportunity. There was couple of chaps I remember speaking to who were victims of LGBT hate crime, and they were saying, I would love to be able to sit with that person and to explain, what you did, it still hurts me. I'm still hurt by it, and it still affects me, and this is why it was wrong, and to educate someone. And for some people, the ability to look ignorance in the eye and to educate it, and to bring people close together and to break barriers of othering is an incredibly healing process for victims. But as I said, it is for some people, it's not for everyone, and no one will ever be pushed into it.
Surely. I'm intrigued. I wonder, would you ever get an offender asking to meet their victim?
Yeah, you certainly do. In many cases, it is the offender. I mean, so one of the reasons that sometimes offenders come forward as well is because obviously, well, it depends on the situation, but the short answer is yes. Often if they're in prison, obviously there's more chances for this to be raised or to be brought up with them because they have certain officers who are in charge of their care and rehabilitation who and they have access to them. Victims sort of go out after the crime's over, they sort of go off and they're not contacted again sometimes, whereas offenders are still in the system. But yeah, short answer, both parties can find a very, very rewarding process. Both parties can ask for it. The biggest barrier we face, the biggest barrier victims and offenders and all of us face to accessing this is ignorance of what it is. And it's the fact that it's not a very well-known concept. It's not promoted very highly in our criminal justice system. It's not given the respect it should be given. So there is a place for restorative justice, and it does happen in our country, and it works. It's been shown to work. But the main problem we face is just that, when you ask 10 people in the street, normally none of them know what restorative justice is.
Or how it works, or how to access it.
Absolutely, yes, all of that as well.
What could we do to improve that?
Well, it's a long game. So obviously there's groups like Why Me, and we're doing lots of campaigning on the sort of the higher level policy stuff, and we're trying to make, a more enforced entitlement for victims to be told about restorative justice. Well, that's all the big scale stuff in the politics, but there's also much more basic local community stuff. And I've been working with different groups throughout Peterborough and Cambridgeshire, working with community leaders, because when it comes to hate crime, often police are the last to know. Often leaders of community groups are the first to know loads of different cases of hate crime. And if there are ambassadors in communities who are able to say, do you know this option exists? We're not asking anyone to be strong-armed into it, be pushed into it, but saying, do you know that if you report this hate crime, and if that, you can say to the police, hey, I'd be interested in pursuing this option. And it's anyone listening to this who thinks it's an interesting idea, or any people who I've spoken to before who are interested in the idea, the best thing they can do to make change in their area is just to tell people about it and to tell victims of crime, that this is an option for you. If you've got things on your chest or things, unanswered questions, there is a process by which you can meet that offender. It doesn't always end up in a full meeting, but there is a process you can go through. So I think that's the short message basically is informing victims about it, making sure they're aware of it, and especially in community groups where there's often a greater degree of trust sometimes than there is between communities and the police.
I mean, I think communities and police are drawing closer together. That's been my experience here in Central Ward in Peterborough. I actually attended a meeting in Faison and Medina Mosque with community leaders and very senior police officers. And they talked about hate crime, and they said they had a zero tolerance to hate crime and wanted to encourage the community to report every hate crime. Now, what the response they got was, of course, sometimes you get a hate crime, it's a drive-by. Do you know who it was? They've gone. It's sometimes too much trouble to get onto 101. And when you dial 101, you're asked a whole bank of questions that don't seem relevant. And actually, at that meeting, I mean, to an extent, I was really impressed with the police's emphasis that they wanted to take every hate crime seriously. But I don't recall them mentioning restorative justice.
No, I mean, they may not have done. And this is the thing, is that, well, firstly, on your first point, absolutely, in my experience working in Cambridgeshire Police, they do take hate crime seriously. I think police tend to take hate crime seriously. And I think there's a perception war to fight to make people feel the confidence to report things. And even if there is a drive-by shouting, you're absolutely within your right and totally can report it. It will be logged in the hate crime figures. It'll be noted. I mean, obviously, you know, we're not naive. It's unlikely to lead to action, but you're always within your rights to report anything like that because it's a crime and it's not acceptable. But secondly, I mean, lots of police officers who are fantastic police officers don't have restorative justice at the front of their minds either. And there's been the reason that YME is focusing on restorative justice for hate crime so much and trying to build up the use of it is because historically it's been an area where people have been not using restorative justice. It's been for various reasons. I think just it's too much of a hot potato issue, really. They sort of think, oh, that's complicated, or, you know, there's sometimes a bit of hesitancy. But actually the evidence shows that restorative justice works and that hate crime is a very applicable crime to bring out those benefits. So yeah, that's what I'd say. It's an option, and it is all about empowering victims and making victims regain their voice.
Regain their voice. A wonderful thought. Now, you mentioned that when the victim and the offender meet together, that meeting is facilitated. That sounds like a very professional and profound role for somebody to be able to handle that sort of a meeting.
I mean, it is. Because often people's concerns are, oh, will it be safe? You know, what if something bad happens? But it doesn't, because the facilitators involved are very well trained. And to go through the process with you, you know, when the victim and the offender both say we want to go through restorative justice, it isn't just a case of, okay, time and a place. There's a facilitator who then will sit with the victim, will talk with them, will hear their views, hear their needs, hear their experiences. They'll then talk with the offender and will do the same thing, and they'll go back and forth, and as much as possible they'll pass messages, so that by the time you get to the restorative justice meeting, no one should be surprised. Everyone should have already had a lot of time to think about what they want to say. They should understand where the other person's likely to come from, and it makes the moment a very healing and profound moment. So, yeah, I've met many restorative justice facilitators. They're volunteers, and they're usually volunteers, and they're extraordinary, and they're very, very highly skilled. So this is in safe hands.
And I'm really pleased to hear that it is a process, not a single encounter, and you build up to that time when you sit face to face, if that is going to happen, across the table perhaps, or in comfortable chairs, sat round with the facilitator, sharing particularly your feelings as to what's happened and the circumstances which brought that about.
Yes, absolutely. It's a very, very powerful, you know, when you go to conferences sometimes, if you work in my area, about restorative justice, and you hear victims speak, and, you know, you hear cases, just to give a quick example, a woman who had been afraid to leave her house for a number of years because it was of a crime, and then restorative justice turned it around. So I'm not saying that, and then she was, you know, met the person, wasn't afraid anymore. So I'm not saying we can't set expectations too high. That isn't the way it is for everyone. But for some people, this really does have a life-changing impact.
You said that the facilitators, many of them are volunteers.
Yeah.
If somebody wanted to volunteer for this, could they, and would they have to go through a lot of training?
Yeah, so, if you want to become a restorative justice facilitator, good on you. It's a wonderful thing to do. It's on the harder end of volunteering in terms of commitment. So you have to go through 3 full days of training. You have to be there's obviously, rightly so, a lot of checks and stuff and a lot of training. And then it's quite a big time commitment taking on the case. But if that is something you want to do, you can contact Why Me again. And any questions, any thoughts, anything you have about restorative justice, if you're listening, Google Why Me Restorative Justice, send us an email, and we will be able to either answer, direct you to the right place, or do anything you need. So if you're interested in volunteering, it really is an amazing thing to do.
The other thing I was really taken with was the fact that it's not only about recent crimes.
No.
For example, you mentioned the woman who'd been confined to her house for fear of going out for many years. And I imagine there would be other people who were victims of a crime some years ago. But it's still important, if they feel affected by that they could come forward?
Absolutely. I heard another case of a really, and often, of course, at these events you hear the most extreme cases. So most cases aren't like this, but here a case of historical sexual abuse between a father and a daughter, and the way that she'd come forward years later, many, many years later, to speak to him about it and how it really was a moment of closure for her. But obviously, also there are many more sort of, dare I say, normal cases, that are less extreme, that also bring huge benefits. So the best thing to remember about restorative justice is that it can be flexible to your needs. If there's willingness on the victim's behalf and willingness on the offender's behalf, adjustments can be made. And those adjustments can be, maybe you just don't want to see them face to face, you want to write letters. Maybe you want to do video shuttles where you send each other messages by video. Maybe you would like to send a representative on your behalf to send a message. There's many ways we can change the process around the needs of the participants.
That's also really interesting to know that there isn't just one way. It is a process, and there are many different ways in which you could engage in the process so that you can, as a victim, continue to feel comfortable and retain your composure and your dignity as you engage with the process.
Absolutely, and it's all about victim control. So we are there to help the victim and whatever they need. So if they, obviously the greatest benefits can come from face-to-face meetings sometimes, but if they really think, letter writing, if it's workable, if the offenders consent and the victim consents, we'll try to make it work.
Mm-hmm. What about an offender that says, I'm not interested?
Well, unfortunately, that's life, and sometimes you're never going to force anyone to take part in restorative justice if they don't want to. However, what I would say is that the very act of getting in touch, speaking to a facilitator, and having the initial conversation about your feelings and about why you want to go through the process, that in itself can be quite restorative and quite helpful. So many, many cases where the victim and the offender never meet, we still hear about great benefits for the victim. So it's worth a try.
And do offenders have to apologise? Are they remorseful? Does it make a better person of them?
There is no requirement on anyone to say anything. People say what they feel. So so offenders don't have to apologise. They usually do. And or if they don't, they usually say almost in as many words. So many of them explain circumstances, which can be helpful. So often that can be a sob story, of course. And some victims feel like I'm making excuses, but it is usually helpful. The offenders will explain, this is why I did it, this is what I was thinking. And it normally isn't that much to do with the victim in many cases. So they don't have to apologise, many of them do. And equally, the victim certainly doesn't have to forgive. Again, some do, some don't, and it's entirely a personal thing. We're there, restorative justice is there to facilitate the meeting, not to make anyone say anything they don't want to say.
Wow. Ben, thank you so much for sharing all of that. A lot of it was new to me and possibly to others. It's been great. Any final message you'd like to share?
All I'd say is if you're the victim of crime and you're thinking, this sounds like something that could be helpful for me, then you can look up Why Me Restorative Justice, and you can just ask a question, no strings attached.
Wonderful. And we'll carry that on our Salaam Radio website as well, so that others can find the link and learn more about what it is you're doing, and especially where there's personal hurt has gone on and fear may have been retained, that people can find a way back. Thank you, Ben Andrew, for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
Cheers. Now, my many thanks to my guest tonight, Stephen Milford from Youth Inspired, talking about investing in our youth across the city. And also very many thanks to Ben Andrew from Why Me Restorative Justice for his insights into this very different approach to dealing with crime. Well, that's all we have time for tonight on Community Matters. Remember, you are the community that matters wherever you are, and we'd like everybody to be a community that lives in peace and harmony and safe from harm. Salam, shalom, namaste, and the peace of God to you all. Good night from me, Adrian Holdstock, on Community Matters.
You're listening to Salaam Radio.